Good evening, everybody. This is Capn Tinsley, saltyabandon with the Salty Podcast, and this is episode 25. And my guests tonight are two folks, a couple that retired to their boat. And it's a 52-foot 1980 Irwin. So I'm going to bring them out, let them tell you all about it. And hello, Renee and Chris. How are you?
Hey. Hello.
Thanks for coming on tonight and telling your story. I appreciate it.
Thanks
for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Tell us about your boat, just real quick, so people know kind of what box to put you in.
It took a long time to find her, but it's a 1980 Irwin 52. She's a catch rig. She had been owned by, we think we're the fourth owner, and she had been really well cared for. When we bought her, we probably paid too much and had to spend a lot to get it right. But we spent 3 years or so getting it refit before we went full time. And, it was sort of an accidental. We weren't looking for an Irwin 52, and we found her, and we just couldn't be happier with our decision.
Well, what were you looking for?
Well, we were looking sort of for a 45 to 50 foot monohull, definitely a monohull. We weren't looking for a catch, and having a catch rig is fantastic. We weren't looking for, like I said, hey, I've worked my whole life. I don't want a project boat. And she's not a project boat, but, a lot of work. So we were looking for something a little smaller, and, the size, like if someone's out there looking for a boat, the size, it does add cost, but man, at anchor, at sea, it's, living the ward full time. We love having the space. We really do.
Yeah, it's definitely more stable out there. Right. Handles the waves. Right. When you're sitting at anchor, other boats can't rock you as much. Yeah. Okay. And also when you're sitting at, even when you're sitting in a slip, right? Same thing. Right.
Yeah, and there's a couple things about her. Like she's got all her sails are on furlers. So, even the main's on a furler, the mizzen's on a furler. And so we can control everything from the cockpit, which we love. Yeah. So it's super easy for two of us to run her.
Okay, great. So what inspired you to retire on a sailboat and cruise the Caribbean? You've been cruising the Caribbean, haven't you?
We have. We've been married 32 years. We were
Congratulations.
Thank you. We were water people all along, but mostly inland lakes. And we had said when we were dating that we wanted to retire on a boat, and we had no clue what that looked like, but it was just something that we had in the back of our mind. And then as Chris was contemplating closing out his career, it just became something for us to, well, particularly for him to research and figure out. You're not so enamored with the day-to-day role anymore. You need something that gets juice in your sails, so to speak. So we started doing a lot of research. We decided it was saltwater. We decided it was sail over power. We changed a lot about our previous lifestyle because we had long-range cruising as our ultimate goal. Once we started reading everything we could get our hands on, watching YouTubes, that was probably 2014, 15, we started looking. So the whole concept of influencers and things of that nature, there were the old school YouTube videos, thank goodness. Then came a lot of new channels, and we just soaked in everything we could find. We started doing ASA courses. Chris had a sailing background. I was a lifelong powerboater. So I asked him to go do the sailing courses with me so we'd be on the same page. So we did that. We did some charters in the States, in the BVIs. And the more we looked into it, the more we just fell in love with it. So we decided on long-range cruising.
You mentioned that you were in inland boaters. Where was that?
So I grew up sort of split between Alabama and Florida. But the first part of my childhood was on the Tennessee River. And so a lot of loopers are familiar with the shoals, Florence, Alabama. So I spent my years growing up there on a boat, learning how to water ski, do all the things there, summer camp and such. And then we moved to Florida. So it was all around the state of Florida, the ICW, mostly the lakes and that sort of thing.
So you moved there as a adult or a child? Moved to Florida.
There second half of my childhood.
Okay. Whereabouts?
My dad is from Pensacola, but we lived in Orange Park. We lived in Brandon, Melbourne, Jacksonville, all over.
Renee moved a lot.
Yeah, so I am
East and West Coast.
Yeah. So I'm salty by nature. Chris grew up in Vermont. He did more snow skiing than water skiing, but he also sailed on Lake Champlain there and at a smaller lake for summer camps.
Okay, so the Northeast, that's the mothership of sailing up there, right?
Right. Yep. And then when we actually met in Atlanta. And so we had a boat on the lake there for 30 years.
Which one? Lake Lanier,
Yeah.
Lake Altoona?
Yeah, Lake Lanier.
Lanier.
Okay.
When the kids came along, like I remember literally heating up bottles on a camp stove in an empty baked bean can. Like we've always raised our kids on the water. When they got old enough that their activities interfered with getting to the lake for the weekend, we just moved to the lake, and then we do soccer down the road and still be able to get to the water after practice or whatever. So we've always been around the water. And so this has been really a dream come true for us.
So what year, Chris, did you start wrapping up your business, your career?
So I retired at 58. I'm 62. So I retired at 58. So 2020. But, Renee was right. Like, I was fed up, and I'm sure there's folks listening that are in that boat, right? And we retired early, and we said, all right, how can we make this work? And so part of the calculus was, get stuff paid off, buy a boat with cash, and then sell everything else that causes expenses. So we sold our cars, our house. We have a small storage place, but we basically divested everything we had so that we could retire when we did. And, and admittedly early, but we're just super careful about it. And it's, at first I was worried, I'm going to retire. What am I going to do? We don't have that paycheck every 2 weeks, and honestly, if you look at the numbers, what we did from a financial perspective, where we were versus what we're spending now, the pretty dramatic change. It wasn't painful at all. I mean, it really wasn't, so we're not buying the really expensive bottles of wine. We're not going out to really nice meals. We're not traveling like we used to, but we're having a hell of a lot more fun. And, and it's just if you look at the numbers, you go, oh my God, that's a really big change. But it wasn't.
You mean like what your income?
Yeah. What we spent.
But you're spending less too, right?
Yeah. Well, we were really good at spending money. So it's just when you get in that groove, the Amazon truck shows up, and so change our mindset. And it wasn't painful at all. It wasn't painful at all.
All right. Well, we'll ask for some tips towards the end of this about how to do that, because people are always asking about that, and everybody's always thinking about it. So anything we can offer to anybody watching.
It's not as big a deal as I know I made it. I was really worried about it. And I always thought, like, well, what the heck? I just, I'll go back to work if I need to.
Right.
I'm not going back to work.
You haven't had to. I'm not.
No.
I work for myself, and I think I'd be unemployable now.
Yeah, I think I would be too. They don't want me.
Really? All right. And what made you kind of move towards cruising the Caribbean?
We started out on the east coast of the U.S., right? First, we did a jaunt down to Boot Key.
Yeah.
Marathon. We hung out there for a bit. We got our feet wet. We spent a season over in the Bahamas with some friends and met a great group of people. Came back that year and went up the East Coast. We wanted to be sure that our ducklings were all on their own track and settled in that, so we weren't too far away in the beginning. We did the cool things like anchor off of the Statue of Liberty, go through New York City through to Long Island Sound, all the picturesque places you hear about as a Southerner. It was really cool to me to see Martha's Vineyard, that sort of thing.
Well, can I just say that's cool? You were anchored by the
pretty
Statue
neat.
of Liberty.
For this Southern girl, that was really a treat.
It was really nice.
Yeah.
I'm Southern too. Yeah.
You dinghy into Chelsea Pier. You go to Chelsea Market, which there's every food in the world there.
It was cool.
It was just really cool.
And then
New York City smells like food.
right?
Chinatown. Oh my God, I just get hungry walking through there.
Yeah. So once we did that, we went back down south, and back to the Bahamas. And then we met a group of people that were talking about going south. And we said, yeah, we're interested too, because you probably know that so many cruisers from the US and Canada get to the Exumas. They get to Elizabeth Harbor, AKA Chicken Harbor, and everybody comes back north. And we wanted to go and see and do more. And it was an amazing decision. We just wanted the cultural changes, the language, the food, the people. We wanted to see it and do a little bit more. And so that for us was a pretty easy decision.
Yeah. The Eastern Caribbean was a really great adventure. We have friends that did 12 years in the Bahamas, or I think they're on their 14th year now. And we sort of like, how do you do that? Don't you get bored? But the reality is the Bahamas, there's
700 islands.
Yeah. So like we
get it now.
We've done 2 trips and we haven't even scratched the surface. So the Bahamas, there's nothing wrong just going to the Bahamas every year. It's so beautiful, right? And it's easy. But you don't get that cultural sort of shift that when you go down island, you really get. You get the French islands, you get, the English
Netherlands,
islands,
Dutch islands,
and then you get Dominica.
And you get international cruisers.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just a different scene.
Yeah. You meet a lot of people from all over the world.
Yeah.
So when you crossed from, say, the Turks and Caicos, I guess Turks and Caicos to Dominican Republic, is that how you went? We
decided we sort of did a hybrid. We didn't want to do the Thorny Path, and we were late. We left kind of the 1st of March from Georgetown. And so we waited for a weather window and motored basically for 4 days dead east in calm conditions, like it was a lake out there.
More like the I-65 route.
Yeah. And so, and then our plan was when the winds picked up to turn. And so it took us 6 days to go from Georgetown to Fajardo, Puerto Rico, which is on the east coast of Puerto Rico. And the first 4 days were easy. The last 2 days were like going east is
ugly.
It's hard. The last 2 days were 25 knots of wind, 12-foot seas on the nose, and like in 6-second periods. Like it was brutal for 2 days. But then we were there, and once you're in sort of the VIs or Fajardo, on that eastern side of Puerto Rico, then it becomes really easy. Everything's close. So we went to Culebra, which is the Spanish VIs, part of Puerto Rico. Then we went to the US VIs. The first time we did it, we skipped the BVIs and did an overnight sail to St. Martin. And you just from once you're in Fajardo, it's island hopping. It's fantastic. You wait for the right weather, and it's easy sailing. Getting there is hard. Yeah, no question about it. But
like the Mona Passage.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, you guys look so. You're like, yeah.
You gotta go.
It was such a great experience, and even the hard moments, you go, oh, okay, I get it now. That whole say, reef early, reef often thing, or not bearing the rail. Like you learn. We came out of South Georgia, so where the boat was based. We were either South Georgia or North Florida, aka the horse latitudes, right? So they're sailing here, but there's not a ton of reliable wind. And so we felt like we were finally sailing once we got down there. We got trade winds. We can move this big old heavy boat. She's 52 feet and 60,000 pounds. So we did a lot of motor sailing up here. When we got down there, it was just, oh,
You're
wow,
sailing.
this is what people talk about.
You saved some fuel, didn't you?
We sure did.
Yeah, we figured out. Well, and you know, if you're out there looking at new boats or you're going to buy a boat, be patient with yourself because it takes a while to get to know how to sail her. And it took us, I don't know, a good 3 years before we're really good at it. And now I think we're not expert level, but we're really good at it.
Yeah, I felt like when I had my Island Packet 27, when I sailed it from Orange Beach to the Keys and back, I felt like I really learned the boat.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know,
yeah, that's right.
I just, it was by leaps and bounds, you know.
Right.
Okay, so what were some of the biggest challenges or mishaps you faced while cruising? People learn from the mistakes, so I always share all mine. Sometimes sometimes people bash me for them, but
right. We learned people called it freshman year, first year of cruising. And it's true because there's just a lot of little things add up to a good or bad experience, right? So we didn't have a lot of horror stories or big mishaps, but we definitely had some freshman year issues.
Yeah, we almost got knocked down off of Hatteras. So I'm taking over for Renee, and I've got a lot of cloth out, and so it's midnight, right? And it's pretty brisk, a little stormy. And Renee goes, she's going to bed, and she goes, you know, you got a lot of cloth out. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. And not 30 minutes later, I was screaming like a 3-year-old, get up here and help me. You know? And yeah, so that happened. And, you know, so I was more aggressive than I should have been, which you learn, right? We lost our centerboard between Martinique and Dominica. It snapped off.
We kept hearing this banging underneath, and we didn't understand what was happening. Like, you know, what's driving that noise? And nothing made sense. Yeah. And finally, I got a tether, a bicycle helmet, my mask and fins, and went under and figured out that the centerboard was just gone. We had dropped it in 7,000 feet of water. There was no recovery.
Yeah.
So, and it was, what were the seas then?
It was not good. Yeah, it was probably 6 feet.
It was a pretty rough day to be doing that. So that was kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
But we made it.
You are a beast, Renee.
You gotta do it. Before I could say anything, she's running. She's coming back up the canoe anyway. She's got her mask on. I'm like,
you gotta do it.
All right, go for it, girl.
Good on you.
Yeah. Mechanically, the boat's been really good to us. We had we lost a water pump off the coast of Trinidad last summer. Last summer. Yeah. And but it happened on a day that was so calm, like we couldn't sail because there was zero knots of wind. It's flat. We were a little close to shore. There were some Venezuelan fishermen around, which was a little unnerving. But we called in, and they came and got us and towed us back. And we had it fixed, like, you know, stuff like that.
Who came and got you?
So a local fisherman turned towboat operator that night.
Okay.
You know, if you saw a picture of the boat that he towed us in with, it was like the African queen. It was.
But after 5 hours, we were glad to see him.
We were glad to see him, and he did great.
So you just called out on the radio, and someone said, "I'll come get you."
Well, in Trinidad, there's all kinds of resources. So there's an organization that sort of watches over cruisers, and they watch you on AIS, and so we hailed them, and they took care of us.
Yeah, it couldn't have happened at a better time in terms of weather, location, where we were for support. Trinidad had some issues with the Venezuelan fishermen, and they nipped that in the bud. So we had the Coast Guard right there. We had a group called North Coast Radio and YSAT watching us, monitoring our position. And there's a port host there. And so he had it all figured out for us. Somebody towed us in. We got in at 1 a.m. Some other cruisers were there to help us hook up to a mooring ball in the middle of the night. Like, it just couldn't have been any better.
It was really no big deal.
Yeah. Freshman year, we also got pinned to the dock sideways. That was awesome. We underestimated the current, right? In Georgia, you can get 8, 9, 10-foot tidal shifts, and you can get 4 or 5 knots of current in the marina easy. And, you know, we're coming out of the lake with big boats, but also multiple motors, big motors. And here we had this heavy boat and an 85 horsepower motor. So that was a big learning experience.
Well, sometimes that can't be helped.
Well, you can choose your window, and we learned that, you know, sit and wait for slack.
Well, there's definitely user error.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But,
one
you know,
time I was trying to leave a dock in Apalachicola, and I was by myself, and I knew this was going to be a problem, but I tried to pull a couple of tricks, you know, and I was like, I'm not going to get away from this dock. And all of a sudden, here comes Cito. I said, hey, and he didn't even charge me. You know, I got Cito. He just threw me a line on the bow and pulled me right off and threw me the line back.
Well, we've since had someone nest on our boat in a slip since then in St. Augustine. So it happens. We learned. We moved on. It hasn't happened again. That was probably 2017.
Now, did you have anybody close by that could, you know, help push you off?
There was no pushing off.
It was so
there was no pushing it.
We just waited. We had to wait. You know, 3 years or 3 hours of shame. We had to sit there. and everybody's, in fact, the marina manager's a friend, and he's calling me on the radio, going, "Ah, you're looking good down there." You know, just filings. But just, you know, it's a thing. You know,
sometimes you just can't leave, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
You know, and that was a good that. We did some damage to our dinghy. That was probably the worst event we had. You know, but it really wasn't that big a deal.
Well, the centerboard. Yeah. Now, is there a way to avoid damage to the centerboard?
Well, so it's a 40-year-old boat, and it had been cracked. Like, once the top part of it was still intact, and the board is 6.5 feet long, so most of it was gone, and we could see that it had been cracked a while. And there's a little user error. We were using it to sail and also to steady the boat in a BMC. And it wasn't designed to do that. And so I think we probably caused it over time.
Yeah.
And it cracked and finally said, enough of you. You know.
Okay. And what did you do?
We were headed to Trinidad, and we had a new one made in Trinidad. It was $4,000 to have the thing made, and it's better than better than the original. And this is a big, you know, the whole thing is 7 feet long or 8 feet long, you know, and it has lead weight in the bottom. Like, it's a engineering thing. And he, you know, the guy down there, the craftsmen down island are fantastic, and especially in Trinidad
for sure.
And it's, you know, it's reasonable. Its pricing is. You get better service, you get better quality, and you're paying, I don't know, a third?
I'd say oftentimes a third of the U.S.
quarter,
price.
A third.
Really?
Yeah, because the labor's, you know,
the
labor's like $20 an hour instead of 150, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're good to go for quite some time on your centerboard.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It should never need it. It should go another 40 years. But I tell you, you know, if folks are listening to their, you know, the boat maintenance, you know, people talk about the 10% a year of the value. It's probably not far off. I don't really look at it too closely because I don't want to know. But one of the things we've done is every time we've had something that needed to be upgraded or fixed, we've made sure that we do it exactly the way you should with the best stuff, right? And in that way, and that's really served us well. I mean, we had the water pump issue, but we've not gotten stranded. We've not had, you know, the issues. And we have a 45-year-old boat, and I can tell you, cruising out there with our friends that have brand new boats or 10-year-old boats or 20-year-old boats, we had fewer problems. And knock on wood,
Quit hitting the table.
knock on wood, that's good. But when you're thinking about a boat, and age isn't so important, it's how she's been taken care of.
Yeah, I really didn't expect some of our friends to have the same kinds of problems that we did. But we have found newer, or even new. Brand new doesn't mean problem free. We had friends, new boats, having to get freezers cut out of their boats because they weren't installed in a manner in which it could be replaced. We had people with the same kind of pump or mechanical issues that we had when they were new and shouldn't have faced those problems. So I think it's all about maintenance, staying on top of things, and just taking care of what you need to take care of, whether your boat's old or new.
Right. Okay. How did living on a sailboat change your perspective on life and retirement? That's a good question.
You got it.
My biggest thing around that is the sailing community. Keep in mind that when we left, we legitimately drove to our boat as the world was shutting down, flights were stopping, all that good stuff around this pandemic. So we didn't know what that was going to look like. But the world was nuts. People were not nice. It was very much divided states of America. It just was common sense, common courtesy, political divide. There are just all these things happening. And I just said, get me out of here.
Were you worried that was going to affect how, like, if something went wrong, you needed help or you needed to come back? Were you worried?
I knew that we'd be okay in the big picture, but I didn't know what it meant for our travels.
Yeah.
Because we had friends who were ahead of us in the process who were already out there. And so we did watch them very closely to see what happened in St. John, what happened in Grenada. And we did definitely have to keep an eye on that. But the really neat thing is what I learned from leaving and going and doing is, I say this often to people, is that the sailing community, the cruising community, restored my faith in humanity. And that sounds corny maybe, but I don't say that lightly.
I get it.
I was just fed up with people. I was looking forward to being on my boat, doing my own thing with my bestie, and screw y'all if you're going to be ugly. And then our very first opportunity to experience that was actually in St. Augustine. And I will forever have a special place in my heart for the St. Augustine cruisers community, because he was still trying to work, finish out his career. I was on the mooring ball by myself, and my dinghy acted up where it never had. I had to get to a store, to get parts without a car. And all those things I had heard materialized. Support, assistance, guidance, driving, whatever you could think of.
Yeah.
I couldn't even ask. Somebody was offering before I could ask. And so what I found over the course of that time frame, 3 years, is doesn't matter what country it was, doesn't matter what country they're from. This group is a phenomenal group of human beings. Yeah. We're all like-minded. We're all a bit adventurous. We're all a bit, hopefully, able to roll with the punches, right? But we all know what it takes to be out here, and we all help others when they need it.
Yeah,
I've done most of my sailing by myself, and I can't tell you how many people have stepped up.
Right.
And I got a credit card, I can pay for it too. And
right.
But there was a lot of free help too.
Absolutely.
Other cruisers, other boaters that stepped up in all different ports. Some people were traveling on their boats. Some people were just staying in the marina. It's just like you said. I mean, I'm echoing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
If I needed something, it was there.
Right.
Yeah. Renee mentioned that group of people that were going south from Georgetown, and we were in the Eastern Caribbean for 2 years. And that group of people, we went south together, and they became lifelong friends. We hung out together for 2 years.
We still do.
Yeah.
We still do.
And it's every walk of life, every boat. Like, all the barriers that exist between people here in the States that just doesn't exist.
Right. Let me do one thing. Introduce tonight's sponsor, which is me. In case you didn't know, my name is Tinsley Myrick. I'm from Remax of Orange Beach, and I sell Gulfront condos in Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Alabama, Perito Key, Florida, homes as well, non-waterfront as well. And if you like this podcast, I also have the Getting Beachy Real Estate and Lifestyle podcast on Thursday nights at the same time, 6 p.m. If you want to hear about real estate and lifestyle here, just tune in and be glad to talk to you and tell you all about the real estate here. Appreciate you letting me do that. Got to pay the bills.
That's a beautiful part of the world.
We love it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I get to sail and sell Gulfront properties. So that's a lot of fun.
Awesome.
I have a question. So I went south in 2020, and when I was trying to get down to say Captiva and Fort Myers and Marco, then I started running into all the boats that couldn't get into the Caribbean. They couldn't go any further. Like they were all, the slips were way overbooked. Of course, I was trying to find a slip. They were all stuck in the Keys and the big yachts too, the big ones, So how did you just kind of get down there first before things started shutting down, or?
Well, so when we went to Marathon, it was it was November of 2020. And so we got there early enough in the season that we were able to get a mooring ball there. But the short answer to your question is we don't stay in marinas.
Right.
We spent 3 years on anchor. And so you just go. The Bahamas that year, there were some, it was a little harder to get there. You had to do a COVID test 24 hours before you left, a COVID test when you arrived, and then another COVID test after you'd been there 5 days. And so there was some protocol that you had to get managed through, but once you're through that, it was easy peasy.
Okay, so because you were staying on anchor, do you think you could have gone at any time?
No, I think depends on where, right? Some areas, like we had friends in St. John, and the Park Service suspended fees for mooring balls because they knew people couldn't move, right?
Yeah.
There were some areas, even like when we did make it to the Bahamas, there's some areas like Abacos and Luther we didn't go to because they had even additional standards beyond the Bahamas framework. So I would say the answer is just depends on where you tried to go. Some places there was almost no movement of boats. We had friends that said, they would go honestly to visit their neighbors on a paddleboard at night because they couldn't be seen leaving their boat even during the heat of the pandemic. Yeah. They were to stay on that yacht, period, end of story. So they'd maybe go visit by paddleboard at night and get off their boat for a little while. So I think it just depends on where you were.
Right. And, when we went to the Bahamas the first time, the pandemic was sort of almost a year old. So the people that had been there the season before, they really got locked down. But by the time that next season came around, the Bahamas sort of had figured out a protocol that would work. And, but I'll tell you, one thing we did the whole time we were in the Eastern Caribbean is we never left the boat, both of us at the same time, and flew home because we heard so many stories of folks that during the pandemic had gone to wherever they were living and left the boat in Trinidad or Grenada or Martinique or wherever and couldn't get back to it for a year and a half. So we just if one of us has got to go home, one goes and the other stays with the boat.
Because of squatters?
Well, because it's our home, right? So we need to be able to
take care of her.
Yeah.
Know she's okay. Right. Move her if necessary. Yeah. Be sure she's not dragging, whatever the case may be.
Okay, I thought maybe there was squatters there that would just, oh, this looks like a good
There
boat.
might be.
These people, none of these people are coming back. So,
Well, I think there was some of that too. I mean, it was a weird time.
yeah. Okay. Perspective on life. I've heard a lot of people say they realized how little they needed after getting rid of everything.
Right.
Can you share on that a little bit?
Chris talked about the Amazon truck coming, right? Well, first of all, when you're long range cruising, it's a whole lot harder to hook up with that Amazon truck.
Yeah.
When you live on a boat full time, there's a whole lot less storage space. So we honestly tried to provision this boat, not just with food, but with the equipment, the things that we thought we would need in advance. So we are both avid divers. Part of the reason we're doing this is to be in the water, not just on the water. So we tried to be sure that we had the right photography equipment, the right scuba gear, things like that. So it's not that we bare bonesed it and we didn't come with anything. I mean, our boat's got a lot of stuff on it. Mm-hmm. But once we made that shift, right? So there's no more golf clubs. There's no more tennis rackets. There's a bit of a trade, right? So we'll focus on our diving gear. We'll focus on spear fishing poles and things like that, right? So once you get out there, hopefully you're good. You're a turtle with your home on your back and you're going. Yeah. And then when we would go home, someone would fly home. We'd come back with a suitcase. And it would have, we need to update the medical kit. We needed a new pair of goggles, that sort of thing. But we tried really hard not to get sucked into the consumerism. And I would say, Chris said it was kind of easy for us. And I say, I think it's largely due to the lifestyle, not because we're, so good at it. I just think it's a minimalist lifestyle to some degree. Yeah. Clothing gets trashed. Zippers get trashed. Hats get trashed. The ocean's hard on everything. The salt air, things wear out, and therefore, why buy and bring the really expensive stuff? You've got to find that value proposition of things that are quality and last. But there's no reason to go overboard out here. You're not showing off for anybody. There's no reason to collect possessions. I collect sea ships. I collect sea beans. That. There's no reason to collect stuff out here.
You can always tell the cruisers because they've got a stained shirt, they got flip flops. They're probably not. It's because you can't have nice things out here. You just can't. Yeah. We each have sort of one set of nice clothing. It just doesn't matter. Yeah, and
I
go
south once a year on my boat, and I'm pretty much taking the same clothes with me. Yeah. We did have to reload after 3 years out there. We've had her since 17. Some things on this boat are wearing out and need to be replaced. Yeah. That's 7-8 years of use. Okay. Yeah. The clothes, after 3 years out there full time, we're going to be replacing some things while we're home. Yeah. But it's just not that hard.
Yeah. And then you think, in the retirement, the transition around money, it's just not as, and you go from having that nice paycheck and, folks that want to do this generally have a nice job and they're leaving. And the reality is that transition is, and if you looked at the numbers, what we did, it looks pretty dramatic, but it wasn't hard. And it's part of what Renee said is that you don't need anything out here. We eat better, we eat healthier, we don't eat, pre-made food because you can't, right? This doesn't work on a boat. So we eat better. And then we're just, I think the one thing that we're doing that's different from before we retired is we're more disciplined about the money. Everything, we have an app that we enter everything into the budget app. So we know what we're spending and where it's spent. We never did that, right? We didn't, the checking count got low. We sort of slowed down, right? You got to be a little more careful, but it's no big deal. No, it's no big deal at all.
What
It's,
a big expense is boat repairs. So
yeah,
you guys do a lot of your own.
we do, but there's stuff like we had the boat painted in Trinidad. She's 45 years old, and the gel coat was sort of gone, and so we had the boat painted, but it was a really good value. We've done some upgrades. You got to have a kitty to do that stuff. You don't underestimate that. I don't think we're spending 10% of the value every year, but a couple of years we have. And the one thing I'm really big on, just whatever you need to do, you do it. Like any maintenance item, you do it, because we're going to sea, and the sea is not kind. Like I'm not going to do something, sort of halfway. And so if I can do it and I know it's done right, I'll do it. If not, we hire somebody.
Well, that's a good philosophy right there.
Yeah.
And salt is hard on a boat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And the sea is hard. Like, there are days when we're getting beat up pretty good, and that's hard on the boat.
Mm. Do you have regular inspections, like, a rigger come and inspect, or?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we do. Our insurance requires us to do a rigger every 2 years, but
Okay.
we do a re-inspection every single time we go out. We often, not every time, but we often go up the mast. We're really careful about that stuff.
Okay.
Because it's
It's largely on us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you need your mast. You don't need it to fall down.
Yeah, we did some things like the boat when we bought her. People that buy this vintage boat will say, "Oh, have your chain plates X-rayed and they're fine if they show up fine." We didn't trust it, so we had the chain plates replaced. We had all the standing rigging replaced. We just weren't going to screw around with, because we still had a paycheck when we were refitting her. So we weren't going to screw around with being out there at sea wondering, is that chain plate going to let go,
Right.
Now I know. They're brand new.
Right. What advice would you give to others considering a similar lifestyle change? You've covered a little bit about that, but is there anything else?
Do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all those
Go
things
small, go now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. Like all those things you're worried about, they're small. Like we've met so many people out there, and every one of them would tell you, almost all of them would tell you, I should have done it sooner. You know?
We've lost several friends along the way. A couple that didn't launch. They didn't get out here. Even they, faced a big illness.
Yeah.
In the process of transitioning, we've lost people while out here in our sailing posse. So for us, the fact that we did go a bit early, it worked for us, and we try to encourage people, knowing that everyone's got to do what works for them. But just we don't want to see you dying at the cubicle.
Right.
The other thing, I mean, seriously,
like,
I love that.
Well, till the end. That's not cool.
Yeah, we're at that age where that stuff happens, and
Sure.
I think people worry about, do I have enough? Right. That's always that. Do I have enough?
Yeah.
You got enough. I can tell you, there are people out there, a lot of them, a whole lot of them, that are living on $500 to $1,000 a month, and they're just fine. And they're
Social Security.
What's that?
Is that Social Security?
Well, or just young kids that just are, scraping by. Young families that they want to be there, and they're figuring out. They're eating beans. They're figuring out how to make it happen.
You see it all.
Yeah, and they're on a boat that I wouldn't want to be on, but they have the same view. They have it's.
Yeah, I've interviewed some of those folks on the channel on the Salty podcast.
Yeah.
So
I think
check it out.
the other thing for people that are considering something like this, we've seen so many different types of people out here doing this, and by and large, people, I would say, people love it and find that it's pretty much in line with what they expected. But we've also found people who didn't love it And I think you've got to want to do it for the right reasons. And we had some people out to the boat last week, friends of ours from Atlanta, who hadn't seen the boat before. And it's just so fascinating to me to watch people's faces when they see my boat, because they don't know if I'm camping. They don't know how I do laundry. There's a big variety out there in this lifestyle between people that use a 5-gallon bucket and a plunger, and people that have washing machines aboard, people that do laundry ashore, people that farm their laundry out.
It's a great example.
This lifestyle isn't one size fits all. Right. So you've got to figure out what works for you and if you can make that work. And for us, we could. I'm like you. There are a lot of people who think they want to do this, or they view it as a means of travel, but they don't particularly care for the water, or they're not boat people, or they're not fix-it people. And then they find themselves spending a lot of time or money or both on problems, and they don't have the satisfaction because it's not their happy place. Right. For me, I grew up on the water. I went inland to raise my family, go to school, those things, have a career. And now I feel like I'm back to me. So I couldn't be happier. This is where I want to be. But we found that that's not true with everyone.
Right.
Mike Wag, I put this comment up here. Can you see that? Mike Wag, who interviewed a couple weeks ago. Capn Tinsley, this is a great interview. I agree with every word they said about chain plates. I've redone chain plates on 2 island packets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen. He's from this area. He's from Orange Beach, and as soon as he gets the boat, we both lost our island packet 27s in Hurricane Sally. When he gets a boat, he does everything to it right at the get go. Right. I saw him do it twice.
I'm going sailing. Like I know,
Yeah. So I'm like you. Like sometimes my husband will go, "There's so many problems, with the boat." And I don't view it that way. You have to really want to do this. You have to want to be there. You want to take the uncomfortableness of a crossing. I do the Gulf crossing, and it has to be worth it to you.
Right.
To an end. Okay, I'm uncomfortable now, but in a minute I'm going to be, anchored out in the beautiful water in the Keys on the west coast of Florida. That's the mindset that has to come about, but not everybody has that, and that's okay. They'll find something else.
Right.
Right. And I know that, go ahead. The other thing I would say is that there's a pretty significant learning curve, but the only way you get through that is going.
Right.
Right. Learning how to sail the boat, learning how to maintain the boat. It took me, I don't know, I know this boat pretty well after 7 years, but I still once in a while learn something new about it,
because if it's not broken, there's no reason that it's just not a priority.
Right. So if you're worried about what you don't know, don't worry about that, because you're going to figure it out. But I think what Renee said is right. You've got to have that sort of fix-it mentality. Like you got to be able to look at a problem. And thankfully, we have YouTube, right? So somebody's done it before, so you just dial it up. And now we have Starlink on the boat.
Yes, information.
Me too.
Yeah. So
game changer, game
changer, right?
Because I'm still working,
Yeah. So you figure it out, and I'll tell you, if you do the maintenance on this stuff, you avoid the big problems. Right. So like diesel engines die because they overheat. Right. Do the maintenance on the cooling system, and you're gonna, that diesel engine's gonna run forever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so dig into the books that don't be too afraid.
Find out what's recommended by the manufacturer and then follow it.
And do it. Right.
Yeah.
Do it.
So Gabby Couric says, especially the thorny patch route. I'm not sure what that's. I know you were talking about the thorny path, but I'm not sure what that references to. So maybe Gabby.
It's a great route. A lot of our friends have done the thorny path, or we should probably say
I prefer a different route because I think it's cheaper to go a different route.
The thornless path that Bruce Van Sant came up with, is what everybody's aiming for. Yeah. And I get it. And that's that's a great way to go. But for us, we just chose the opposite because we have a big beefy boat. We are on the saltier side of things. We're not scared of a passage. And so we had 6 days out there instead of 6 weeks hopping along the island. So we didn't do Turks and Caicos. We didn't do the DR. You know, we've done them before, but we didn't stop on this passage because we felt okay with the weather forecast. We got to go straight. And our friends who did do the thornless path took 6 weeks to catch up to us. Now, depends on if that's, you could see that as a good or a bad thing, right?
Right.
Yeah. They're taking their time, not in a hurry.
Renee mentioned the boat, like it's big and beefy. We also carry 250 gallons of diesel.
Yeah.
So if you're out there thinking about boats, the older boats, like your Island Pack, they have big tanks, right? So the big tanks have, you know, we have big tanks, water tanks, big tanks, diesel tanks, water maker, so that you've got sustainability out there. You know, we have solar with lithium batteries. You know, we can go weeks on the hook and never run the generator. I need the generator to make water because it's an old, big electric hog, you know, water maker. But, you know, think about that self-sustaining. The newer boats, we have a friend that's got a beautiful new boat and they carry 40 gallons of diesel. No. You know, and it's a 45-foot boat. You know, no.
Wow.
That's not enough.
Yeah, not for us. Not for what we want to do. Right.
Right. So
Mike has another question. He asked this before and we never got it up on a former podcast. He wants to add, he's got a 1987 Island Packet 29, I think. And he needs to add refrigeration to his box, you know.
Yep. So we did this.
Do you have any feedback? You did? Okay, great.
Yeah. So ours we had a Seafrost engine driven system and an AC driven electric system. And so you could run either one. And we had a big fridge and an ice box. And it was inefficient. It was old. And so we did a couple of things. We switched over to DC refrigeration and did that. We converted both the ice box. Well, we converted the freezer to DC with like a Venture-Frigo compressor, and then we replaced the refrigerator with the isotherm drawers that are DC. So we have all DC refrigeration. We also added, because when we were doing the refrigeration, we were living on the boat, so we bought one of those DC coolers, fridge freezers, and so we're like, we'll keep this. It's the beer fridge, so we have that plus the 2 refrigerator doors plus the freezer, and our 840 amp hours of solar or lithium batteries and like 1200 watts of solar supports that just fine. And so we can be on the hook, and we cover all of our energy needs for the refrigeration. And it's plug and play, like it's super easy. We got to defrost the freezer. In fact, we did it yesterday. Every once in a while.
But it had been 3 months or something.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Because in the humidity you get more frost. But I would encourage you to, and there's, if you're handy, you can buy those systems. I think Seafrost has them where they come pre-charged, ready to go, and you mount it
into the existing space without a big overhaul.
Right.
So my limit on 3 Gulf crossings was ice and diesel. Ice was the biggest problem. We are fortunate to have an ice maker aboard. We had a fabulous couple that owned this boat before us who made sure that the creature comforts were aboard. So washer, dryer, ice maker, huge water maker, 16 kilowatt generator. We have all the things for comfort. So we're fortunate that we do have an ice maker. Now, we don't run all the time because of the power draw. We oftentimes use the silicone ice trays that make the big cocktail cubes. We find those work really well on the boat for cocktail or otherwise because they last. So a lot of times we'll do ice cube trays in the freezer and leave it at that. If we're going to be on anchor for a while, we'll probably, our friends are around. We tend to have the crowd over to the Oceanaire. We will fire up the ice maker.
Right. Yeah, it's sort of the ice maker is sort of the tipping point of our power. If we had another 200 amp hours of lithium and another 200 amp hour or 200 watts of solar, we could run it all the time. But it's sort of the tipping point that if it's a little bit cloudy for a day or two, the ice maker kills us. So we end up running the generator. So we generally, unless we have a party or something, we generally don't run it.
I don't worry about ice. It's just, and I don't miss it. But I have one of those ice boxes that are inside of the original ice, the freezer box.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's what he needs is he just has a refrigerator box and he has to put ice in there.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but just I just had it replaced, the ice box.
Right.
It
But
just went out.
A lot of folks now are using like the Dometic or the ARB. We have an ARB.
That's what I have, Dometic.
Yeah, and like it comes at it's a cooler, and they're not they're $600, $700. The bigger ones are like $1,000, but that's a lot cheaper than boat refrigeration, and they work awesome. They work great.
You're
But they're
talking about
very
the
efficient.
standalone cooler?
Yeah, it's a standalone cooler, right?
Yes. Ingle or Dometic, ARB.
Right. Those are a lot of folks we know. They got them as a backup and they've kept them. We did the same thing. It's the beer fridge. You got to have a beer fridge, right?
So Mike was saying, he's got 130 watts of solar. I've got two 375 watt solar panels. And I've got two, I forgot the brand, 2 lithium batteries, the big ones. It's a lot of, it's the Rolls Royce of lithium batteries. And I also have, wind generator. What else? I also have a 5,000 watt generator, but I took it all the way south down to the Marquesas and I didn't use it, but I had it there just in case.
Right. We use ours to run the water maker, and if we have a couple of days, if it's cloudy, we do that. But we have 3 375s, those LG 375s, and then we have 840 amp hours of lithiums, Battleborns. So there's 8 size 31 batteries, which is like a big car battery. We've had them since 2020. The lithium's life-changing because you can run it all the way down. You get use of all of the amp hours, and really, it's really life-changing. And then we had a Honda 2000 generator that we carry with us, and I'm glad we did.
I think mine's 2,500. The one at home is 5,000.
Yeah, yes, we have this little Honda
portable.
generator.
Yeah, the Honda one.
And we carry that with us, and we've only had to use it twice, but I'm darn glad we had it because we were able to, charge the batteries when we needed, when the generator, I don't remember what was wrong, but the generator wasn't generating. And,
yeah. So tell us we're almost out of time here. We've been on 58 minutes. Tell us about the new business adventure and why you started it.
Well, so we had made it down to Trinidad and thought we were going through the Panama Canal and continuing on. And we had several family events come up this past year. My mother was end of life and in hospice and passed away. So I came home to do hospice care with her. Our middle son and daughter-in-law had the first grandchild. So we have a new sweet baby girl, and they requested us home. And then our youngest son graduates college in December. So between all of those things, we felt the pull to come home. And since we're going to be home for a bit, we wanted something to do to stay busy, stay on the water. We don't like sitting still, right? So we decided that we'd move some boats. So we got our captain's licenses and started Oceanaire Yacht Deliveries and have begun the process of moving boats for people while we're home this year.
So how do people find you for that?
So
What's that?
So if you go on Facebook, or Instagram for that matter, Sailing the Oceanaire, we have a page for the boat, right? And then you'll find links for the delivery business there, and find us.
Oceanaire Yacht Delivery.
Speaking that's
our boat.
I wanted to show just a couple of pictures before we go. It was this video here.
While you're looking, Tinsley, if folks are listening and they have we're an open book, so if you have questions and you want to talk to us, send us a DM on Facebook. We'll find a time. Like if there's something about this that you want to know more, dig into, we're always happy to help. So always have, this is it's a big transition. So if you need some coaching or advice or want to share an idea, please do.
Yeah, I'm also in the process of writing my first book. While we were out cruising, one of my goals was to get published, write some articles. I did some writing in my career, but wanted to switch gears to the sailing world. And so I was able to get something published in the Caribbean this year. And I've also been working on a book. So it's a cruiser's resource. And I look forward to getting that out. And hopefully it'll be helpful to people that would like to get into the lifestyle as well. Go ahead.
This is part of one of the most wonderful things about
those
sailing.
The best ever.
The dolphins like to swim with the boat.
Absolutely. Riding that bow wave.
I was thinking, you have such a way with words. I was thinking, I bet she's an author. There's a lot of sailors write books. So I'm happy to hear that you have a book.
Yeah, it's underway.
All right. So they can go ahead. They can find you on YouTube and Instagram, Sailing Oceanaire. And there they can ask you about if they need a boat moved, or they can ask your advice on how you guys did it.
Like our job's to be helpful. Like that's kind of our
awesome
thing. So
that's my job too, is to bring you to the people.
There you go.
There were a lot of people that helped us get out there, right?
Yeah.
We were new at this at some point, and so we're happy to share the knowledge.
All right. Well, we'll just wrap it up with that.
Okay.
And I usually like to end. Let me find my little outro video with Saltyabandon out.